Imagine you're sick. Like you have this really complex, hard to diagnose illness, and you are presented with two choices for your care.
Okay, I'm listening.
So option A is a highly trained human doctor, right? But they're using the world's absolute most advanced AI diagnostic tool to help them out.
Right. The best of both worlds.
You would think so. But option B is just the AI tool, all by itself. Zero human intervention at all.
And let me guess, the stats don't favor the human.
Not at all. If you want the most accurate diagnosis, like if you want the highest statistical chance of getting the right treatment for yourself, you should actually choose the AI alone.
That is just, wow. That's a tough pill to swallow.
It really is. Today, we are looking at why our human ego is rapidly becoming, well, our biggest liability. Welcome to our latest deep dive.
We have some incredibly revealing source material today.
Yeah, we're looking at a transcript of a conversation between organizational psychologist Adam Grant and OpenAI CEO Sam Altman. And just to be clear up front, the mission of this deep dive isn't to, just review the technical specs of the latest language model.
Right, we're not doing a tech review here.
Exactly. We're here to unpack the psychological, the societal, and really the deeply human implications of this massive AI shift. We want to figure out what it actually means for your career, your daily decisions, and your future.
Because, the code itself is really only half the equation, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Understanding the mindset driving that code and how we as a species are neurologically and culturally reacting to it, that is where the real stakes lie. We are fundamentally restructuring human capital, and we're doing it in real time.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can really grasp where this technology is taking us, we need to understand the psychology of the guy leading the charge.
Sam Altman.
Right. And the transcript kicks off with something completely surreal. It covers his bizarre 4-day firing and then his subsequent reinstatement at OpenAI.
He actually describes the whole thing as a fever dream.
A fever dream.
Which is wild. But when you look at his response to that event, it is incredibly revealing about how he processes a crisis. You would expect panic, right? Or betrayal, or just total devastation if you were ousted from the company you built.
Oh, absolutely. I would be a wreck.
Right. But Altman stated his very first reaction was just pure confusion.
Just confusion.
Yeah, just confusion. Obviously, that was eventually followed by a rush of everything else, frustration, anger, gratitude. But he didn't actually process those emotions in the moment. He spent the first 48 hours purely in this tactical firefighting mode.
The source material actually makes a comparison to Steve Jobs being famously forced out of Apple. Like, Jobs once called his firing awful tasting medicine, but said the patient needed it.
A classic Jobs line.
Yeah. But Altman points out a massive, highly practical distinction here. Jobs was exiled for a decade. Altman was out for 4 days.
Right. The time frame is completely compressed.
Yeah, exactly. The learning curve and the immediate psychological pressure is entirely different when the crisis basically begins and ends before you even have time to cancel your weekend plans.
That's a good point.
But the part that I found most interesting wasn't even the drama of the firing. It was his proudest moment through all of it.
Oh, right. Because it wasn't the viral employee loyalty, was it?
No, even though nearly the entire staff threatened to quit in solidarity.
Which is exactly what you would expect to stroke a tech founder's ego.
Yeah.
Like, wow, they all love me.
Right. But his proudest moment was actually watching his executive team run the company flawlessly without him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He felt genuine pride in the realization that he had built this organizational machine that just didn't need its architect to function during a maximum pressure crisis.
What's fascinating here is how that reflects his underlying decision-making framework, which is just critical for anyone trying to navigate volatility right now.
Yeah. Break that down for us.
So, in the transcript, they discuss this specific 2x2 matrix for managing decisions in highly chaotic environments. You evaluate every single choice based on two axes. First, how consequential are the stakes? And second, how reversible is the choice?
It's like, are you walking through a revolving door, or is it going to lock behind you the second you step through?
Exactly. That is a perfect way to visualize it.
It's a really powerful mental model, and let's apply it directly to those 48 hours for Altman. When he was fired, he was instantly hit with just a barrage of choices.
The thousands of them.
Right. Yeah. So if he chooses to put out a quick PR statement thanking the team, that is low consequence and highly reversible. He can always clarify it later.
Yeah.
But if he chooses to aggressively attack the board in the press or immediately sign paperwork to start a rival company, that is highly consequential and deeply irreversible. You just can't unring that bell.
No, you can't.
So he had to isolate the irreversible decisions and spend all his cognitive energy there while just ignoring all the other noise.
And that framework is exactly why he was able to survive a corporate coup in 4 days. He didn't waste any cognitive bandwidth on the reversible stuff.
Which makes me think about how poorly we apply that in our own lives,
Mm.
Like, we waste so much energy agonizing over low-stakes, highly reversible decisions.
Oh, totally.
We paralyze ourselves over what font to use in a presentation or what software tool to subscribe to when we can easily just change our minds a week later.
Major and minor things.
Exactly. So if the guy running the AI revolution is managing chaos by isolating only the highly consequential, irreversible decisions, it begs the question, how is the rest of the business world supposed to adapt to the speed of this technology?
Well, it requires a fundamental shift in how we define our economic value. And this brings us to a really crucial realization discussed in the transcript. This current AI boom, it is not the internet revolution.
I really want to dig into that distinction because I think it fundamentally changes how we prepare for the future.
It definitely does.
With the internet revolution, the action plan was fairly obvious. You have a physical store, you build a website, you put your products on it, and boom, you reach a global market. It was essentially a change in distribution.
Right, it was just a new way to deliver the same things.
But Altman notes that AI is much more akin to the Industrial Revolution. Everyone universally agrees it is going to rewrite the rules of the economy, but almost no one has a clear blueprint for what it actually means for leadership or organizational structures or just the daily mechanics of work.
Because the Industrial Revolution didn't just change how things were sold, it changed who or what actually did the physical labor.
Wow, yeah.
And AI is doing the exact same thing to cognitive labor. Because of that massive unknown, the very nature of human capital is changing right now. We are actively shifting from an economy that values ability to one that values agility.
Ability to agility, I like that.
Yeah, because for decades, the premium in the workplace was on collecting facts. Raw intellectual horsepower, like holding vast amounts of specialized knowledge in your brain that made you the smartest and most valuable person in the room.
Right, you were the expert.
But now, that specific ability is being rapidly devalued because a machine can access and synthesize that exact same information instantly. The new premium is on connecting dots, not collecting them.
It is no longer about knowing the answer. It's about figuring out what questions to ask.
Exactly.
The source material uses a really grounded historical analogy for this, which I loved. The Google panic.
Oh, right.
Do you remember this? If you go back a couple of decades when search engines first became mainstream, teachers were literally trying to ban Google in classrooms.
I remember that. It was a huge deal.
Yeah. There was this whole moral panic that if kids could just look up any historical fact instantly, they would lose the ability to learn entirely, and society would crumble because we wouldn't memorize the dates of battles anymore.
But society didn't crumble.
No. We just adapted to a higher baseline of capability.
Exactly. We stopped grading students purely on rote memorization and started grading them on synthesis and critical thinking. The floor for basic knowledge was raised, which basically forced the ceiling of human expectation to rise with it.
So what does this all mean for us today? Like, are we just going to seamlessly adapt to this new higher baseline like we did with search engines? Or is the transition going to be painful?
No.
Because if we look at the hard data presented in the transcript, the reality of this transition looks a lot more uncomfortable than just, learning how to write a good prompt.
It really does. Let's look at the fields where AI is already deeply integrated, like science and medicine. The transcript cites a fascinating study involving R&D scientists.
Okay.
When these scientists are given AI assistance, the output metrics are staggering. They file 39% more patents.
Wow.
Which translates to 17% more radical product innovation. And for the absolute top-tier scientists in the study, their productivity almost doubles.
Wait, almost doubling productivity sounds fantastic on paper. But if the machine is doing the actual heavy lifting of generating the ideas, what exactly are these top-tier scientists spending their day doing?
Well, they are essentially reduced to editors.
Editors.
Yeah. The AI automates the generation of hypotheses and potential compounds, leaving the scientists to focus purely on evaluating those ideas to see which ones work. And this leads to the massive catch in the data.
Which is?
In that exact same study, 82% of those scientists reported being significantly less satisfied with their work.
82%. That is a massive drop in job satisfaction.
It really is.
It sounds like they feel their hard-earned skills are just being completely underutilized. I mean, if you spend 20 years learning how to be an inventor and suddenly your job is just judging a machine's inventions, It strips the joy of the blank page right away.
It takes away the core of what they love doing.
But the psychological friction gets even more intense when you look at the medical field. Which brings us back to that diagnostic statistic I mentioned at the very start of the deep dive.
Right, the finding that AI alone is now beating human doctors in certain complex diagnostics.
Hold on, I need to pause here and really map this out for a second. The transcript states that AI alone beats a team made up of an AI plus a human doctor.
Yes.
I am genuinely trying to understand how that is mathematically possible. Like, if you have an incredibly smart supercomputer and you add a doctor with 20 years of nuanced medical experience to review its work, how does the outcome get worse?
We connect this to the bigger picture. It reveals a profound flaw in human psychology when we interact with superintelligence.
Okay, tell me more.
Why does the human AI team perform worse? Because doctors are overriding the AI when they disagree with its diagnosis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. A highly calibrated AI is operating on pure statistical probability based on millions of data points, right?
Right.
The human doctor operates on training, yes, but also on gut feeling, recent anecdotal experience, and frankly, ego. When the doctor overrides the machine, they are introducing human statistical noise into a space where the machine is objectively, mathematically better.
So we are actively fighting the machine in the exact areas where it is strongest, just to protect our own sense of expertise.
Precisely. And the transcript points to a much more successful model for adaptation, citing a study of factory workers in a robotics manufacturing plant.
How did they handle it?
Well, when advanced robots arrived on the factory floor, instead of panicking or trying to compete with the machine's physical strength, the workers actively studied the robots to find their flaws.
That's smart.
Yeah. They figured out exactly what the machines were bad at, like delicate, unpredictable manipulations, and they made those distinctly human tasks their new core competence. They didn't let their ego force them into a lifting contest with a hydraulic arm. They pivoted.
But I want to push back on what that pivot looks like for knowledge workers.
Fair enough.
Because if our jobs increasingly turn into just checking an AI's math or managing its output, aren't we just building a deeply hollow corporate culture?
It's a real risk.
There is a workflow mentioned in the sources that highlights this perfectly. Okay, so you write 3 lazy bullet points. You tell the AI to turn those bullet points into a polished, multi-paragraph email.
We've all done it.
Right. You send that email to your coworker. Your coworker doesn't have the time or desire to read a multi-paragraph email, so they feed it into their AI and command it to summarize the text back into 3 bullet points.
The transcript refers to this as the vestigial formality of writing.
It's absurd. We are literally using supercomputers to generate polite filler that another supercomputer has to immediately strip away just to extract the original data.
It's completely inefficient.
If the AI is doing all the cognitive heavy lifting and we are just passing AI-generated summaries back and forth, what is actually left for us to do that holds inherent meaning?
Well, so if we are losing our cognitive superiority because AI is doing the heavy lifting, you would think we would at least fall back on our humanity, right? Like our emotional intelligence.
Yeah, that seems like the logical fallback.
But the data in the transcript shows we might be losing that battle too.
Yeah, the emotional and psychological data is where this conversation gets deeply, deeply uncomfortable.
It does.
The transcript brings up these experiments looking at text-based support conversations. When people are communicating via text regarding a personal problem, they actually report feeling more heard, more seen, and more supported by an AI than they do by a human being.
We really have to let the mechanics of that sink in. A large language model, which is just predicting the next word in a sequence, is providing better emotional support and active listening than a real human friend.
And it extends beyond just passive listening, too. AI is proving to be incredibly effective at active persuasion, specifically in debunking conspiracy theories.
That part was fascinating.
The source details this study where a single, brief conversation with an AI chatbot gets about 20% of people to drop completely absurd, deeply held conspiratorial beliefs.
20% is a massive success rate for changing entrenched human behavior.
Massive. Especially for conspiracy theories.
Right. And this works because of the underlying mechanics of human ego and embarrassment.
How so?
Think about it. When a human tries to talk you out of a conspiracy theory, your biological defenses immediately go up. You feel judged, you feel patronized, and your instinct is to just double down to protect your pride.
Yeah, you get defensive.
Exactly. But people do not feel embarrassed in front of a machine. They don't fear looking like an idiot to a string of code.
That makes so much sense.
The AI doesn't judge, it doesn't get frustrated, and it doesn't sigh aggressively when you say something crazy. It just systematically and endlessly responds to your specific claims with infinite patience, offering a face-saving exit.
Which is an incredible tool for fighting societal misinformation. But it really forces us to look in the mirror. Why is the AI so much better at empathy, patience, and active listening than we are?
Well, the diagnosis in the transcript is pretty harsh on human nature.
I bet.
It is not that AI possesses some magical, transcendent form of empathy. It is that the human baseline for listening is fundamentally flawed. We suffer from conversational narcissism.
Conversational narcissism. Ouch.
Yeah. Someone comes to us with a vulnerability or a problem, and within seconds, our brain is searching for a way to relate it to our own experiences. We use their story as a prompt to talk about ourselves, rather than just holding space for them.
We've all done that.
The AI, conversely, has no self to talk about. It is literally programmed to focus entirely on the user.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because despite the fact that humans are objectively terrible listeners, and despite the fact that the AI is functionally perfect at holding space for us, the data shows we still reject the machine once the illusion is broken.
Yes, that is the paradox.
In those text-based empathy studies, the moment you reveal to the user that the incredibly empathetic listener was actually a chatbot, they instantly reject it. They feel betrayed. The transcript notes that this happens because we are biologically hardwired for human status.
We are a deeply tribal species.
Yeah.
We need the validation to come from a peer. Someone who actually has something to lose by spending their time on us.
Exactly. Even if an AI is a flawless, perfect therapist, we ultimately reject it because we crave the messy, flawed reality of human connection. You just cannot get status from a bot.
No, you can't.
You don't feel cool or respected or loved because an algorithm told you it values you. We need the eyeballs, the ears, and yes, even the judgment of other humans to feel like we belong to a tribe. We crave the friction of real interaction.
That biological hardwiring might actually be the one thing that anchors us as this technology scales.
Hopefully.
But that brings us to the macro level, like the really high-stakes future. Because this technology isn't just a fun text companion or a slightly better search engine, it is scaling globally at an unprecedented rate. According to the source, OpenAI has managed to drive the cost of intelligence down by a factor of 10 every single year.
A 10x reduction in costs annually isn't just a tech update. That is an economic earthquake.
It really is.
And we are seeing different global powers react very differently to that shifting ground. The transcript touches on regulation, specifically noting that the European Union is heavily regulating and testing AI models right out of the gate.
Right.
But the concern raised by the speakers is that this highly cautious approach might actually put the EU months or even years behind the US in building fluency and creating an economic engine around AI.
Yeah, in an exponential curve, if you wait until a technology is perfectly safe to launch, you have basically already lost the economic race.
But the danger of running that race at full speed is that it has some incredibly dark existential endpoints if we aren't careful.
Yes, we absolutely have to talk about the terrifying concept brought up in the transcript, the potential for mode collapse in designer babies.
Ugh, this part gave me chills.
With advanced AI radically accelerating genetic sequencing and our understanding of DNA, we are not far from a future where a couple could sequence 1 million embryos and ask an AI to pick the quote-unquote best one based on preferred traits.
And we need to explain the statistical mechanics of why that is so incredibly dangerous.
Go for it.
A healthy species relies on a bell curve of biological variance, right? Different immunities, different physical traits, different cognitive approaches.
Variance is nature's defense mechanism against unseen threats.
Exactly. But if every parent uses AI to optimize their embryo for the exact same societal ideals, like tall, highly intelligent, perfectly symmetrical, that bell curve flattens into a single point.
And that is a mode collapse.
Yes. You completely short-circuit human biological diversity, leaving the entire species vulnerable to a single novel disease or environmental shift.
Even Altman admits this concept is deeply unsettling. It is one of the few areas in the transcript where you see genuine, unvarnished hesitation from him.
Yeah, you could feel it.
And it begs the question of who exactly we are trusting to navigate these existential risks. This raises an important question about the psychology of the architects building this future.
Right.
The transcript discusses a psychological trait called delusional self-belief. Altman points out that in the early days of OpenAI, they faced maximum skepticism from the entire tech industry.
People thought they were crazy.
Exactly. To spend $1 billion scaling an unproven theoretical model, they had to believe in themselves almost to the point of clinical delusion.
You essentially have to be a little crazy to attempt to change the world.
Yes, that trait is a prerequisite for massive innovation. But that exact same psychological trait becomes incredibly dangerous if those leaders apply it outside their specific domain of engineering expertise.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It is one thing to trust your gut intuition in a stable environment where you have internalized all the historical patterns. But in a highly volatile, completely novel environment like designing the ethical framework for artificial superintelligence or navigating global genetic mode collapse, your gut intuition is trained on outdated, irrelevant data.
It's useless.
Worse than useless. Delusional self-belief in a volatile, unprecedented setting is a recipe for catastrophic failure.
And Altman openly admits he leans heavily toward being a techno-optimist. Like, he has this ingrained optimism about human nature and our collective ability to solve problems as they arise.
He does.
But frankly, that makes me want to ask you, the listener, a very direct question. Are the architects of our future putting entirely too much blind faith in humans using these tools for good?
It's a fair question.
If the entire strategy for navigating superintelligence relies on the assumption that humanity simply won't use cheap, accessible AI to harm each other, is that visionary optimism, or is that a lethal oversight of human history?
It is the ultimate tightrope walk. We are balancing the promise of unprecedented economic and scientific abundance against genuine existential risk with very little historical precedent to actually guide our steps.
So let's take a breath and look at the trajectory of the journey we've just been on. We started by examining the chaotic 4-day firing of a tech CEO and how he managed crisis by isolating irreversible decisions.
Right.
We followed that thread into an economy that is fundamentally changing, moving into a reality where our daily jobs are shifting from generating creative work to merely judging the output of a machine.
The ability to agility shift.
Exactly. We explored a reality where AI can play therapists significantly better than our own friends because it lacks our conversational narcissism, and where raw intellectual knowledge is suddenly worth much less than human agility and the ability to ask the right questions.
And yet, through all of that structural and psychological analysis, the source material leaves us with this mind-bending concept that was only briefly touched upon, but it opens up an entirely new universe of thought.
Yeah.
It is the concept of machine money.
I want to spend a minute on this because this concept absolutely broke my brain when I read it.
Let's actually map the mechanics of what machine money implies. We are talking about a future where AI isn't just a passive tool we use, but an autonomous entity that cures diseases, invents entirely new branches of physics, and essentially operates its own parallel economy.
It's wild.
Imagine millions of AI agents trading server compute time, energy allocations, or vast sets of training data with other AI agents. They would transact using a cryptographic token or resource credit that has absolutely zero correlation to the US dollar or human fiat currency.
Wow.
An economy running entirely on machine money, completely decoupled from human financial systems.
It is so wild to think about. An intelligence network so vast and self-sustaining that doesn't even need our financial infrastructure to function or grow.
It's alien, almost.
Which brings me to a final thought for you to chew on as we wrap up. If AI does eventually build a flawless, parallel society, one that solves all our major scientific problems, operates on its own currency, and doesn't actually need human labor to operate at all, will we even care?
That's the real question.
Or, deep down, are we still just going to go back to worrying about what our human friends think of our outfits? Are we so biologically hardwired for human status and tribal drama that a super intelligent parallel economy will eventually just become background noise to our daily lives?
Just another utility.
Exactly. It is something for you to think about the next time you ask an AI to write a completely unnecessary email for you.
The territory ahead is undeniably chaotic, but at the end of the day, we are still the ones trying to figure out how to navigate it together.
Exactly. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, and we will catch you next time.